Right before the camera started rolling, someone rushed up to Jeff Vandrew and slipped him a note. The message was crystal clear. Don't let her bring up the timeline. But the second that hearing began, she was already holding it. The timeline was right there in her hands. And what happened in the next few minutes, that wasn't supposed to get out. But here's the thing, it did. And by the time this was over, a congressman would be calling an emergency recess just to escape the room. Stay with me, because what I'm about to show you involves sealed documents that were never supposed to see daylight, millions of dollars moving through the shadows, and a signature that one politician desperately wished he could take back. Before we get into how Jasmine Crockett cornered a sitting congressman using nothing but his own handwriting, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because this story has layers you wouldn't believe. We're talking about abuse reports that vanished into restricted archives, contractors making fortunes off human suffering, and a moment so intense that even the chairman didn't know what to do. This isn't your typical political theater. This is what happens when someone actually does their homework and brings the receipts. The House Judiciary Committee room has seen some wild moments over the years. Impeachments, Supreme Court battles, constitutional crises that end up in history books. But most oversight hearings, they're boring as hell. Technical stuff, procedural nonsense, the kind of government process that matters for keeping people accountable, but never makes headlines. Nobody's tuning in to watch mid-level bureaucrats answer carefully worded questions about policy implementation. It's dry, it's unforgettable, it's the stuff that puts journalists to sleep in the press gallery. Today's hearing was supposed to be exactly that, just another routine review of ICE enforcement practices and detention facility oversight. The witness list read like a cure for insomnia. Mid-level agency officials who'd been media trained to say nothing interesting. Policy experts who'd speak in jargon. A few advocacy groups who'd make their points and get ignored. Nothing that would draw more than a handful of reporters or generate any viral moments. Just another Tuesday in government oversight land. But Jasmine Crockett had something else in mind entirely. See, while most members of Congress treat routine oversight hearings like box-checking exercises, she'd spent the previous week doing something radical, actual investigation, real detective work. Her background as a lawyer had taught her something crucial. The most damaging information is always buried in the documents that nobody expects you to read. The appendices that make your eyes glaze over, the footnotes that seem too technical to matter, the administrative records that get filed because regulations require them, but that never actually get reviewed by anyone. And in this case, she'd found something that changed everything. Evidence of a comprehensive ICE abuse report, one that was supposed to have been submitted to Congress 6 months earlier. This wasn't some preliminary draft or incomplete assessment. This was a finished report, completed, signed off on by multiple officials across different agencies. And then, quietly, deliberately, it had been sealed in a restricted archive. The kind of place where congressional oversight committees can't just walk in and grab files. You need specific authorization. You need to know it exists in the first place. And someone had made sure that very few people knew. The report itself was devastating. It detailed systematic problems at detention facilities across 3 states. We're talking about inadequate medical care that left people suffering from treatable conditions, questionable use of solitary confinement that violated established guidelines, financial irregularities in contractor payments, millions of dollars that didn't add up, and what the investigators had termed credible allegations of abuse by personnel at multiple sites. The kind of abuse that should trigger immediate intervention and criminal investigation. This was exactly the kind of document that federal law requires be shared with congressional oversight committees. That's not optional. That's the law. And it had been deliberately hidden, buried in a way that made it almost impossible to find unless you knew exactly where to look and exactly what you were looking for. But here's where it gets really interesting. The signature page. Among the officials who'd signed off on this report's findings, who'd put their name on a document certifying they'd reviewed it and verified its accuracy, was someone who now sat on the House Judiciary Committee. Someone who was in that very room, Jeff Vandrew. the New Jersey congressman who'd made headlines by switching from Democrat to Republican, who'd rebuilt his entire political identity around hardline immigration positions, who'd become one of the loudest voices defending ICE enforcement no matter what. Vandrew had reviewed this report during a brief stint on an administrative oversight board before coming to Congress, and his signature appeared right there on page 17, next to a certification that he'd reviewed the findings and recommended appropriate remedial action. His name, his signature, his certification that the problems documented in this report were real and needed to be addressed. Now, 18 months later, Vandrew was one of the loudest voices claiming that concerns about ICE detention conditions were completely overblown, Democratic talking points, political propaganda designed to undermine immigration enforcement. He'd been saying this in committee hearings, on cable news, and press releases, over and over, the same message. The facilities are well run, they're properly monitored. Anyone raising abuse allegations is just trying to score political points. And apparently, he was hoping nobody would remember or discover that he'd once signed a document saying the exact opposite, that he'd put his name on findings that documented the very problems he now claimed didn't exist. Crockett had discovered it, and she'd come to this hearing prepared to make Vandrew explain how his signature ended up on a report he now pretended never happened. The hearing opened like they always do. Chairman Jim Jordan gave brief opening remarks about the importance of proper oversight while also supporting law enforcement, the usual balancing act. Ranking member Jerry Nabler responded with comments about balancing security with human rights, the usual counterposition. Various members asked preliminary questions of the first witness, an ICE official who gave careful, non-committal answers to everything, the kind of responses that technically answer the question without actually saying anything useful. It was all very procedural, very unforgettable, exactly what everyone expected. The journalists in the press gallery were scrolling their phones, other committee members were checking emails. It was just another hearing. Then Crockett got her 5 minutes, and everything changed. She started with a question that seemed innocuous enough, almost boring. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask our ICE representative about the status of the comprehensive facility review that was completed in March of last year. Can you tell us whether that review identified any systemic issues that required congressional attention? The ICE official looked confused, genuinely caught off guard. I'm not sure which specific review you're referring to, Congresswoman. We conduct multiple facility assessments throughout the year. I'm referring to the March 24th review conducted by the Joint Agency Task Force, Crockett clarified, reading from a document in front of her. The one that examined detention facilities in Texas, Arizona, and California. The one that was supposed to be submitted to this committee but somehow never arrived. Are you familiar with that review? The official shifted uncomfortably in his seat. I'd have to check our records to determine the specific status of that review. Let me help you out, Crockett interrupted smoothly, because I have a copy of the executive summary right here, and it makes for pretty disturbing reading. Inadequate medical staffing at 70% of reviewed facilities, financial discrepancies totaling over $3 million in contractor payments, multiple credible allegations of abuse that were never properly investigated. This review found all of that. So my question is, why wasn't this submitted to Congress as federal law requires? You could feel the energy in the room change completely. Suddenly, other committee members were paying attention. Journalists in the press gallery had stopped scrolling. And Jeff Vandrew, sitting 3 seats down from Crockett, had gone very still. The kind of still that suggests someone knows exactly where this is heading and desperately wishes they were somewhere else. The ICE official tried to deflect. Without seeing the specific document you're referencing, Congresswoman, I can't speak to its status or the reasons for any delays in transmission to oversight committees. Oh, I can show you the document, Crockett said, pulling out a thick folder. In fact, I can show the whole committee, because what I have here is not just the report itself, but the administrative records showing who reviewed it, who signed off on it, and who specifically recommended that it be classified as restricted and sealed instead of being submitted to congressional oversight. She paused, just long enough to let the implications sink in, long enough for everyone in that room to start putting the pieces together. Then she turned to look directly at Vandrew. Congressman Vandrew, you served on the Administrative Oversight Board during the period when this report was completed, correct? Vandrew's expression had gone from still to frozen. I served on multiple boards and reviewed numerous documents during that time. This isn't numerous documents, Congressman. This is a specific report about systematic abuse and financial irregularities at ICE detention facilities. And unless someone forged your signature, you reviewed this report and certified its findings. She held up a page, angling it toward the cameras so everyone could see. That's your signature on page 17, isn't it? The room erupted in murmurs. You could hear people whispering to each other, see staffers leaning in to talk to their members. Vandrew was visibly flustered, his face reddening. I'd need to see the context of that document before I could comment on my participation in any review process. The context is right here, Crockett said, and her voice had gotten sharper now, more prosecutorial. The context is that you signed a document acknowledging serious problems at detention facilities, problems that included credible allegations of abuse and millions of dollars in financial discrepancies. And then, after you switched parties and joined this committee, you spent 18 months telling the American people that concerns about ICE detention conditions are Democratic propaganda. So, which version is true, Congressman? The one where you certified that serious problems existed, or the